I walked into my house that evening and froze. My hands started shaking before I even fully processed what I was seeing. There she was, a girl, maybe 19 or 20, sitting on my cream-colored sofa like she'd lived there her whole life. She was wearing clothes that looked brand new, designer labels I recognized from the boutiques downtown. My throat tightened. Something was deeply, terribly wrong. But let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here, because this didn't start 3 hours ago when I came home from the office. This started 6 weeks earlier, on a night when I made a decision I thought was simple. I thought I was being a good person. My name is Marcus Whitmore. I'm 52 years old, built my real estate portfolio to about $14 million. Never been married, no kids. I live in a 6-bedroom colonial in Westchester County, just outside New York. The kind of place where your neighbors are investment bankers and retired surgeons, where the HOA president actually knows what he's doing, and where you can't mow your lawn on a Sunday before 10 in the morning. It's quiet. It's safe. It's mine. That November night, I was driving back from a property showing in White Plains. The temperature had dropped fast, one of those sudden cold snaps that hit the Northeast hard. I was listening to a podcast about commercial real estate trends, not really paying attention, when I saw her on the shoulder of Route 119. She was huddled against a brick wall outside a closed gas station, wearing a thin jacket that wouldn't keep anything warm. Her lips had a bluish tint. She was shivering so hard I could see it from my car. I should have called the police. That's what a rational person does. Instead, I pulled over. "Are you okay?" I asked through the window. Stupid question. She looked at me with these wide, scared eyes. "My car broke down," she said. Her voice was barely audible. "My phone's dead. I've been trying to flag someone down for like an hour." She was beautiful in that fragile, desperate way that makes you want to help. Dark hair, pale skin, the kind of girl you'd see in a coffee shop studying for a college exam. She definitely looked like she could be in college, maybe a freshman or sophomore. "Get in," I said. "It's freezing out there." That was the first mistake. Her name was Ashley. She'd been driving back to her dorm at NYU when her car started making a weird noise and just died. She'd tried calling her roommate, her mom, even roadside assistance, but her battery died right as someone picked up. She'd been standing there for what felt like forever, getting colder and colder. She kept thanking me over and over, her teeth chattering. "Where do you live?" I asked, pulling back onto the highway. "The dorm is in Washington Square," she said. "But honestly, I don't want to go there tonight. My roommate's boyfriend is there, and it's this whole thing. Could I stay somewhere nearby? Like a motel or something? I can pay you back. I have money, I just need to get to an ATM tomorrow." I should have driven her to a motel and left her there. That would have been the smart move, the safe move. But it was past midnight. She was half frozen, and every motel between White Plains and the city looked like the kind of place where you don't want a young woman alone. "I have a guest house," I heard myself say. "You can stay there tonight. I'll help you figure out your car in the morning." The gratitude on her face was almost unbearable. She cried a little, thanked me about 30 times, and curled up in the passenger seat, still shivering. I turned up the heat. I told her about my business, my properties, my life in Westchester. She listened like I was the most interesting person she'd ever met. That should have been my second warning. The guest house is about 100 yards from the main residence, completely separate, with its own entrance and driveway. I'd renovated it 5 years ago for my brother Mark when he was going through his divorce, but he'd moved to California and I hadn't used it since. I unlocked it, turned on the heat, and gave her a pile of fresh towels and some old clothes my housekeeper had left behind. "There's a kitchen, a bedroom, a bathroom. Make yourself comfortable," I said. "Sleep in as late as you want. We'll deal with everything else tomorrow." She hugged me, actually hugged me. I was so uncomfortable I barely moved my arms. "Thank you so much, Mr. Whitmore. I don't know what I would have done," she said into my shoulder. "It's Marcus, and you're welcome. Get some rest." I went back to the main house and poured myself a drink. I told myself it was fine, that I'd done a good deed, that by tomorrow this would all be resolved. Her car would be towed, repaired, and she'd be back at NYU by the weekend. The next morning, I called my mechanic. He went out to the gas station and found Ashley's car, a beat-up 2015 Honda Civic with a transmission that was basically shot. Parts alone would be $3,000, plus labor, maybe $4,000 total. I was going to pay for it anyway, I decided. It wasn't a big deal for me. But when I went to the guest house to tell her the news, she was sitting on the porch with coffee, looking like she'd been waiting for me. "I have to tell you something," she said, "and please don't be mad." Those 5 words should have made me turn around and walk back to the main house. "What is it?" I asked. "I lied about the dorm," she said. "I'm not actually at NYU. I was living with my aunt in the Bronx, but we got into a fight and she threw me out. I've been sleeping in my car for 2 weeks. I didn't want to tell you because I was embarrassed." My stomach sank. I was looking at a homeless 19-year-old girl, and I'd just invited her to stay in my guest house. "Why did you lie?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Because if I told you the truth, you wouldn't have helped me," she said. Her eyes were red. "And I'm sorry. I know that's manipulative or whatever, but I was so cold, Mr. Whitmore, I thought I might actually die." I stood there for a long moment, holding 2 cups of coffee, trying to figure out what to do. I should have called a social services number. I should have found her a shelter. I should have done a lot of things. Instead, I said, "It's Marcus, and you can stay here for a week while we figure this out. 1 week. After that, we need to get you connected with resources, shelters, social services, something." "Really?" she asked, and the smile on her face was so genuine, so grateful, that I felt like I'd made the right decision. That was the 3rd mistake, the biggest one. A week turned into 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into a month. By early December, Ashley had settled into the guest house like she'd always lived there. She'd given me a sob story about her parents, dead in a car accident when she was 17, aunt who was an alcoholic, no other family. She showed me old text messages and photos on her phone. Everything checked out. I bought her clothes, real clothes, not hand-me-downs from my housekeeper, warm coats, new boots. I paid for her to get her car fixed and back on the road, though she rarely drove it anymore. I set her up with a therapist through a local nonprofit. I was being a patron, a benefactor, a good person. She spent her days at the guest house, decorated it, planted some flowers in the window boxes. She'd come over to the main house in the evenings and cook dinner with me, tell me stories about her life, ask me about my business deals. She seemed genuinely interested in everything I did. She laughed at my jokes. She made me feel like someone worth spending time with. By the middle of December, I was introducing her to people as Ashley, the young woman I was helping. I invited her to a client dinner. I took her shopping in Manhattan. I was her benefactor, her mentor, her safe place. What I didn't realize was that I was being auditioned. On a Tuesday night in late December, I came home from the office to find my housekeeper, Diane, looking flustered. "Mr. Whitmore, I think you should go to the guest house," she said. "Ashley asked me to help her with something, and I'm not sure about it." "What do you mean?" I asked. "She wanted me to help her pick out furniture, like a whole new bedroom set, a dining table, things like that. She said you were paying for it, but I wanted to check with you first because it seemed like a lot." My stomach did a small flip. "Where is she?" "In the guest house, on her laptop looking at prices." I walked out there, my keys jingling in my hand. The sun had already set, and the December night was cold and clear. I could see the lights on inside the guest house, warm yellow through the windows. I could see her silhouette moving around inside. I knocked on the door instead of using my key. She opened it with a smile that fell away when she saw my expression. "Hey, what's wrong?" "Diane said you're looking at furniture," I said. "Oh yeah, I just thought, since I'm staying here longer, maybe I could make the space a little more mine? But I can wait, I didn't mean to." "How much longer are you staying?" I asked. She blinked. "What do you mean? I thought, aren't I living here now?" The question hung in the cold air between us. "Ashley, we talked about this. 1 week turned into a month. You were supposed to be getting back on your feet, finding a job, figuring out your next steps. What's the plan here?" Her eyes started filling with tears. "I thought you wanted me to stay. I thought we were, I don't know, like a family or something. You've been so nice to me and I'm so grateful, and I just thought—" "I do want to help you," I said carefully, "but I need to understand what that looks like. Are you in school? Are you working? What's the end goal?" "I can't afford school," she said quietly, "and I've been looking for jobs, but nobody wants to hire me without an address. I've been staying here because I didn't know where else to go." The guilt hit me like a punch. She was right. Without an address, without stability, how was she supposed to move forward? "Okay," I said, sighing. "Let's sit down. Let's talk about what you actually need." We sat in the guest house living room and she outlined her situation. No high school diploma. She dropped out junior year to care for her aunt. No work experience beyond babysitting cash jobs. No family, no safety net. She was 18, technically an adult, but practically she was a kid who'd been failed by every system that was supposed to protect her. And I had money, a lot of money, and I was starting to think of myself as her savior. "Here's what we'll do," I said. "You get your GED, I'll pay for the classes and the test. After that, we'll figure out community college or job training. You'll stay here while you do that, but you need to be working towards something. Agreed?" "Agreed," she said, and she hugged me again, and I felt like I was doing something noble. I was an idiot. By the time I came home that Tuesday evening in late January, 6 weeks after I'd picked her up on the highway, everything had shifted in ways I couldn't see. The house was different. Not physically, everything was in the right place, but it felt different. It felt like it wasn't quite mine anymore. And there she was on my sofa, wearing designer clothes I hadn't bought her, looking at me like she'd been waiting for this moment for a very long time. "Ashley," I said carefully, "what's going on?" She smiled. It wasn't the grateful smile I'd gotten used to. It was something else entirely. "We need to talk," she said, "and you're not going to like it." "We need to talk," she said, "and you're not going to like it." I set down my briefcase. My hands were already starting to sweat. "Okay," I said slowly. "Talk." Ashley stood up from the sofa with a kind of theatrical grace I'd never seen from her before. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and tailored black pants. Her hair was styled professionally. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread, not like the freezing girl I'd picked up 6 weeks ago. "I want to know," she said, "if you've thought about what comes next for us." The way she said "us" made my skin crawl. "I don't understand," I said, but I was starting to. "You've been so generous," she continued, walking toward me slowly. "So kind. You've given me clothes, money, a home. You've made me feel safe for the first time in my life." She paused. "And I think you've developed feelings for me." "That's not—" I started. "It's okay if you have," she said, and she smiled. It was a predator's smile. "Because I'm going to give you a choice, Marcus, and I suggest you choose very carefully." Every instinct I had was screaming at me to leave the room. Instead, I stayed frozen. "What choice?" I asked. She pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. It was a video. Me, asleep on the sofa in the main house, with her sitting next to me, her head on my shoulder. In the video, she was kissing my forehead while I slept. Then the angle changed. She was recording herself, whispering things that made my blood run cold. "They made me do this," she was saying in the video. "He's been forcing himself on me, and I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. I'm only 19. The video was perfectly edited, professional. It looked completely real. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. "This," Ashley said calmly, "is your insurance policy. If you do exactly what I tell you to do, this video never sees the light of day. But if you try to kick me out, if you call the police, if you do anything other than what I ask, I'm sending this to the NYPD, the DA's office, and every news outlet in the Northeast. I'm also posting it on Reddit and TikTok. By the time it goes viral, your name will be permanently attached to child sexual abuse." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "You're 18. "I'm 19, she corrected. "But the video says I'm terrified and confused. It says you groomed me. It says you bought my clothes and my affection because you wanted to manipulate me sexually. And who do you think people are going to believe, Marcus? The 52-year-old millionaire real estate developer, or the traumatized young woman who has no family and nowhere to go? I sank into a chair. My mind was racing through the implications. Even if I proved the video was fake, and I wasn't sure I could, the accusation alone would destroy me, my business, my reputation, my entire life. "What do you want?" I asked quietly. "That's the smart question," she said, sitting back down on the sofa like we were having a casual conversation. "I want $50,000 a month, transferred to an account I'll set up. I want to stay here, in the guest house, for as long as I want. I want you to buy me whatever I ask for. And I want you to introduce me to your business contacts as your protege, someone you're helping succeed." "You're insane," I said. "I'm practical," she corrected. $50,000 a month is nothing to you. You make that in a day. And in exchange, I stay quiet, and your life goes back to normal, mostly." "What happens when you decide $50,000 isn't enough?" I asked. She smiled again. "Then we renegotiate." I stood up. I needed to think. I needed to call my lawyer. "Don't bother calling anyone," Ashley said casually. "I have insurance. There's a video file encrypted on a server with a dead man's switch. If I don't check in every week, it goes live automatically. If I disappear, it goes live. If I get arrested, it goes live. If anything happens to me, it goes live. So you're stuck with me, Marcus. The only question is whether you're going to do this the easy way or the hard way." I walked out of the house without another word. I got in my car and I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't be in that house anymore. I found myself parked outside the office of James Chen, my attorney. It was almost 8 o'clock at night. The office was dark. I sat in my car in the parking lot and I called him anyway. He answered on the third ring, groggy with sleep. "Marcus, it's the middle of the night," he said. "I need to see you," I said. "Tomorrow morning, first thing, and I need you to tell me how fucked I am." James was in his office at 6 a.m. I told him everything, the whole story from the night I picked Ashley up on Route 119 to the video and the threat. I watched his face get darker and darker as I talked. "You're in trouble," he said finally. "Not insurmountable trouble, but trouble." "How much trouble?" I asked. "The video is the problem," he said. "Even if you can prove it's edited, the accusation has already done damage. In the court of public opinion, you're guilty. In an actual court of law, we might be able to prove it's a deep fake or fabricated, but we'd need evidence that she created it. We'd need to prove motive, and we'd need to move carefully, because if we come at her too hard, she releases it out of spite." "So what do?" I asked. "First," James said, "you document everything. Every interaction you have with her, every threat, every request for money. You record it if you legally can. You build a case that this is extortion. Second, you get that dead man's switch disarmed. We might be able to work with the server company to identify where the file is stored, prove it exists, and prove that she set it up. Third, you don't pay her anything, not 1 cent. "She'll release the video," I said. "Probably," James said. "But if she does, we fight it in court. We bring in digital forensics experts. We prove it's fake. And meanwhile, we prosecute her for extortion and blackmail. She goes to prison. You go to war, but you win." I went home. Ashley was waiting for me, sitting on my kitchen counter in one of my dress shirts, swinging her legs like a child. "Did you call your lawyer?" she asked cheerfully. "Yes," I said. "Good, then you understand the situation." She jumped down from the counter. "I'm going to need some spending money. $5,000 should cover it for the week. I'm thinking about redecorating the guest house, maybe some artwork, some better furniture." "No," I said. She stopped moving. "What?" "No," I repeated. "I'm not giving you anything. I'm not paying you anything. And you're going to give me access to that dead man's switch, or I'm going to the police right now." For a moment, her face went blank. Then she laughed. It was a real laugh, not the practice thing I'd heard before. "Oh, Marcus," she said. "You think you're in control here. You think you can fight me. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I'm dealing with a 19-year-old con artist, I said, and I'm done. She pulled out her phone. Okay, she said, let's see how you like it. She hit send on something and my phone buzzed immediately. I looked down. It was a text from an unknown number with a link. I didn't click it. I didn't need to. I already knew what it was. I'm calling the police, I said, and I reached for my landline. She moved faster than I would have thought possible. She grabbed my wrist and twisted, hard. I yelped, more in surprise than pain. You don't get to do that, she said. Her voice had changed. It was deeper, colder. You don't get to have a choice. I gave you a choice and you fucked it up. Now we do it my way. I yanked my wrist free. Get your hands off me. Or what? She asked. You'll call the cops? Tell them what? That the girl you picked up on the highway and brought to your house and bought clothes for is blackmailing you? With a video that looks exactly like what a predator looks like? They'll arrest you before they arrest me, Marcus. And by the time your lawyer gets you out, I'll have given interviews to every news organization in the country. She was right. She had me. I sank into a chair and I put my head in my hands. When you're ready to be reasonable, Ashley said, you know where to find me. She left, heading back to the guest house. I sat in my kitchen in the dark, trying to figure out how my life had come to this. That's when my phone rang. It was Diane, my housekeeper. Mr. Whitmore, she said, and her voice sounded strange. I'm at the police station. I need you to come down here. It's about Ashley. My heart stopped. What happened? I'm not supposed to say, Diane said, but they want to talk to you about her. They have questions. I grabbed my keys and drove to the Westchester County Police Department. James met me there. He must have called him already, or I had. I couldn't remember. We sat in a small gray room across from a detective named Patricia Reeves, who had kind eyes and a voice like gravel. Your housekeeper came to us this morning, Detective Reeves said. She said she was concerned about your safety. She said she overheard a conversation between you and the girl, Ashley, that she felt was threatening. What did she overhear? I asked carefully. She said the girl was threatening to post a video online if you didn't give her money. She said the girl mentioned a dead man's switch. She said it sounded like blackmail. Detective Reeves leaned forward slightly. Is that accurate? I looked at James. He nodded slightly. Yes, I said. That's accurate. We're going to need to see that video, Detective Reeves said. There are two versions, I said. One that's real and one that's fake. The fake one is the one she's threatening me with. How do you know it's fake? She asked. Because I didn't do what it says I did, I said. I picked her up on Route 119 because she was freezing. I let her stay in my guest house, but I never touched her. I never did anything inappropriate. The video is a deep fake or an edit. Detective Reeves nodded slowly. Here's the thing, Mr. Whitmore. Your housekeeper came to us because she was worried about you, but she also told us something else. She said she helped the girl pick out furniture. She said the girl was looking at very expensive pieces. She said the girl asked her not to tell you about some of the purchases. Does that sound right? Yes, I said. And your housekeeper said the girl was on her laptop a lot, making videos, taking photos. The housekeeper said she saw some of the files. She said they looked edited. She said some of them had your face in them and some didn't. I realized what was happening. Diane had been gathering evidence. She'd been protecting me without me knowing it. We're going to get a warrant for her devices, Detective Reeves said. We're going to examine those files, and if they're what we think they are, if they're fabricated, then we have a case. Extortion, blackmail, wire fraud if she sent the file electronically, possibly identity theft or deepfake creation depending on what she did. She's looking at serious federal charges. What about the dead man's switch? I asked. We're working with the FBI on that, Detective Reeves said. We've already contacted the server company. They've cooperated fully. The file exists on their servers. It was uploaded from an IP address that traces back to your guest house. We're going to preserve it as evidence and make sure it doesn't go anywhere. I felt something loosen in my chest. For the first time since yesterday, I could breathe. There's one more thing, Detective Reeves said. We ran her background. Her name isn't actually Ashley. Her name is Miranda Cole. She has 2 prior arrests for fraud and extortion, one in New Jersey, one in Connecticut. Both times she targeted older men with money. Both times she used the same MO. She positioned herself as vulnerable, gained their trust, then threatened them with false accusations. She's good at it, but she's not invisible. Jesus, James muttered. She's been doing this for about 3 years, Detective Reeves continued. We think she's victimized at least 6 men that we know of. Most of them were too ashamed to press charges. You're the first one who reported it. I felt sick. I thought about those other men. I thought about the shame they must have felt. I was angry at myself for almost joining their ranks. What happens now? I asked. Now we pick her up, Detective Reeves said. We execute the warrants, we examine her devices, and we build a case. If you're willing to testify, we prosecute. She goes to prison. She doesn't get to do this to anyone else. They picked her up that evening. She was still in the guest house, packing clothes into a suitcase like she was planning a vacation. She didn't resist when they read her rights. She didn't cry or beg. She just smiled that predator's smile and asked for a lawyer. The case took 6 months to build. The FBI confirmed that the video was a deepfake, created using publicly available software and stolen images of me from my company website. They found 17 different versions of fake videos on her devices, each one tailored to the specific man she was targeting. They found detailed notes about her victims, their net worth, their vulnerabilities, their schedules. They found proof of the dead man's switch and confirmation that it would have triggered automatically. She was charged with federal extortion, wire fraud, identity theft, and deepfake creation. She pled guilty to avoid a longer trial. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in federal prison with restitution to her victims. I thought I'd feel satisfied when she was sentenced. I thought that would be the end of it. But satisfaction didn't come. What came instead was a strange kind of grief for the girl I thought I was helping, who never existed, for my own naivete, for the 6 months I spent looking over my shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The video never went public. The FBI made sure of that. But the investigation itself became public. Local news picked it up. Millionaire real estate developer targeted by serial extortionist, the headlines read. And while the coverage ultimately exonerated me, it also changed how people looked at me. Some people questioned whether I'd been completely truthful. Others whispered that I'd done something to deserve it. The damage was subtle but real. I fired Diane 3 months after the case closed. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because every time I looked at her, I felt ashamed. She'd protected me when I couldn't protect myself, and I couldn't bear to be reminded of that weakness. She sued me for wrongful termination, and we settled out of court for $150,000. I sold the guest house. I put it on the market for $220,000, and it sold within a week. I couldn't stand to look at it anymore, knowing what had happened there. I threw myself into work. I closed 3 major real estate deals over the next year. I expanded my portfolio to $20 million. I made myself indispensable and successful and untouchable. I did everything I could to prove that I wasn't the kind of man who could be victimized by a 19-year-old con artist. But the truth is, I was that man. I am that man. Last month, I saw her name in the news again. She'd been released from prison after serving 4 years with good behavior. The article didn't say where she was or what she was doing. It just said she was free. I thought about calling Detective Reeves. I thought about asking her to keep tabs on Miranda, to make sure she didn't start up again. But I didn't. What would be the point? The system had done its job. She'd been caught and punished. The rest was my problem to carry. I learned a lot of things from what happened with Ashley, or Miranda, or whoever she really was. I learned that kindness without wisdom is just another kind of foolishness. I learned that the people who hurt us most are often the ones we let in. I learned that being wealthy doesn't protect you from being used. But the most important thing I learned is this. Sometimes the monster doesn't look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a scared girl in a thin jacket on a cold November night. And sometimes, the only way to survive is to stop believing in monsters altogether and start believing in evidence instead. I never picked up another hitchhiker. I never let another stranger into my home. I built walls, and I've lived behind them ever since. Whether that's wisdom or cowardice, I honestly don't know anymore.